All right. For those of you that are here on the weekly coaching call that we have at the Digital Strike Hub, my name is Rey Ortega. I'm the AI Automation Alchemist. I am your master here at the Digital Strike Hub, and I'm glad that you're able to come on here. If you're on here, I know I hadn't seen much registrations for this week's session, but that doesn't matter. We're doing this anyways because at the end of the day, some of you are going to watch some of these videos and you're going to say, dang, I wish I was there to ask him some questions, because that is what the whole Digital Strike Hub is about. It's about asking questions, about figuring out how do we use this technology, especially if you're a small business owner, entrepreneur, you're someone who's working every single day in your business. You're not working on your business, you're working in your business every single day, trying to do all the things that all the entrepreneurs are trying to do. We're trying to build the business, we're trying to do our finances, we're trying to do our accounting, we're trying to do sales, marketing. There's all these things we're trying to do. We're wearing 5 hats and it's absolutely crazy. And if you've been there before, I've been there before. If you're there now, I'm telling you, this is where you want to be. This is the whole reason why I'm doing this. The Digital Strike Hub, if you are here to not only learn, but to ask questions and to have someone to talk to, another entrepreneur to talk to, so that you can feel like you're comfortable, that you're around the right people, the people that are going through the same thing you're going through. And that's what we're all here for. So first of all, thank you. Thank you to that. The second thing is we're also recording our podcasts. Why? Because why not? When I do these podcast recordings, usually separately, it's I'm teaching the same thing in the Digital Strike Hub, and I'm teaching the same thing when I go out and do presentations. So I'm like, why is not just record it all and just get it all done in one fell swoop? So if you're part of the AI Automation Alchemist podcast, if you're not part of it, definitely subscribe. You can check it out on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify. I almost said Shopify, but you know what I'm saying. But and then obviously the end all be all, the place where everything ends up, is YouTube. So you could look at it on our YouTube channel. It's sponsored. This whole thing is sponsored by Grata Software. So Grata Software is my software engineering company I've had for over 12 years. Our company, we were AI before AI was cool. We were doing AI way before everybody else was doing it, especially from a back office company perspective. If it wasn't for the big guys, the Deloittes and the IBMs and all those people, nobody would have known I was even available to a small business. And that's why 12 years ago, I created the company Grata Software, because I felt like small businesses didn't have the same resources some of the big guys, and they were having trouble figuring out why is it that the big guys are able to do so much so quickly, and scale so grandly. And so I created Grata Software so that I can help small businesses optimize their workflows in their company, figure out the areas of growth that they're looking to expand on, and then fill in the automation and the AI that's necessary to help build those things. The perfect example I give is the fact that most small businesses end up being stagnant at some point. The CEOs tend to work so much in their business that they're not even strategically thinking anymore. And so what ends up happening, those businesses go stagnant. Over time, people get burned out, and then ultimately the business is closed. And the thing is, you can get to a business to a certain point. But the thing is, you can't automate and you can't use AI until you have a process in place or something that can actually be automated. So that's why it's important that we get your business to a certain point. And then once you're at that point, now we can look at what we need to automate, what we need to add AI into, so that we can grow and scale the business at orders of magnitude. And that's the purpose of that, right? But in order to get there, you need information how to get there. That's what Digital Strike Hub is. And that's the reason why Grata Software, my company, that's why we sponsor this, and we put time and effort into this for you as the entrepreneur, small business owner, so that you can get the information you need so you can get your business to a certain point. All right. So what are we talking about today, and why am I here? Well, we're talking about perplexity. Perplexity is the topic for today. And the reason why we're talking about perplexity is because we've already covered in previous episodes ChatGPT, and we've covered Claude. And then there was a few bonus episodes in there of certain things that are going on in the AI industry. But I promised perplexity, so I'm going to give you perplexity. And so that's what we're here to talk about. So let's get started.
The most real and relevant resource on AI and automation. AI Automation Alchemist podcast, sponsored by Grata Software.
So today we want to talk about perplexity. This is basically a continuation of tools. If you guys have been following me, you'll know that I got onto this 30-day podcast challenge. And in this 30-day podcast challenge, I promised to make a podcast a day. And about 10 episodes in, I started to realize this is a lot harder than I thought it was, because the purpose of doing a podcast is to provide information, provide some type of entertainment. I'm not an entertainment guy. I'm a software engineer by trade, been a software engineer for over 26 years, built my company Grata Software, created my Digital Strike brand to work with small businesses who are starting out or who are trying to find their first customers. And then I created the AI Automation Alchemist podcast. And the whole reason of all of this is just because I am so ingrained in the artificial intelligence space, not because I'm some master or anything in it. I just happen to be a software engineer who just loves deep diving into stuff. And so I've been building software for over 26 years. I'm self taught, didn't go to school for it. I built everything by reading books, listening to blog posts, or listening to podcasts, or listening or reading blog posts. I basically started on forums back in the late 90s, early 2000s, and that's how I learned how to build websites and how to do dynamic web pages and all that kind of stuff. So I've been at this game for a pretty long time, and the problem I found as of late. So we've been through multiple cycles of this, where this is a constant change in the industry, where new technology comes out and it streamlines the process of businesses being able to take advantage of things that they normally had to hire experts for, like a software engineer or web developer or web designer. That's what usually in the olden days, which is like 20 years ago, they used to have to hire all these professionals in order to be able to do these things. And then same thing with marketing. Back then, marketing was more of a traditional thing: flyers, mailers, advertisements on TV. There was no social media or no place where you can go and create advertisement or go reach out and find customers on a mass scale basis until social media came around, or not just social media, but until we got to like the MySpaces and the Facebooks and stuff like that. But even then, it wasn't until Facebook really ramped it up and Google ramped it up. There really wasn't much other ways of marketing or taking your company and move it out there. We used to literally, when we started a business, we used to have to tell people, okay, your website is your storefront, but you need to drive people to your website. So how did you drive people to your website back then? Well, some of us would wrap our car or put a magnet inside of our car that had our website on it. Some of us would go out to networking events and we would just, tell people about our stuff. We go to a, a print house, a design in a print house that would create business cards and then take those, and then we put the website on the business cards, and we go to events and we hand them, or we do flyers or postcards or mailers and all those everything. We try to drive traffic to websites back then. Back then, there wasn't a really clear funnel in the early or late 1990s, early 2000s. And it wasn't until some really smart marketers, once everyone started realizing that content was really going online with these forums and everything, that's when they started coming up with the idea of these JavaScript pop-ups, and the pop-ups would be an ad, and it would interrupt your day. It would interrupt your experience, and it just got worse and worse. And so, anyways, so the industry kind of goes that route. Everyone goes crazy. They all jump in, and then what ends up happening is, for instance, WordPress came out. WordPress is like, we're going to simplify the whole web development process. So everyone, their mother, jumped into WordPress. WordPress was the thing. Oh, WordPress is going to kill the web designer. But then what ended up happening is everybody's WordPress blogs looked exactly the same. So then someone came up with the idea is, I'm going to create a plugin and I'm going to create customized WordPress themes. And so they made customized WordPress themes. Well, guess what? That now required a developer to build a custom WordPress theme. Well, I want to create plugins so that I can interact with data that I already have in some server somewhere. Now we need a software engineer to come in and plug in and do all that kind of stuff. So you can imagine some of us who are our age who have been through this whole business model, why we're not jumping around every time we see a new model come out from Anthropic or from ChatGPT or anything. Because all of these things, they come out, there's a lot of hype. When people start using them, they start realizing that it's more complex than they think. And then they start having to hire consultants and hire people to come in and help them with it. And then ultimately now we're actually getting to that point. If you actually pay attention now with all of these computer things, like Perplexity has computer, Claude has computer. And then on top of that, you can do Claude code. And now people are using OpenClaw. All of these tools are now getting complex. So where the person that it was originally designed for is no longer able to just download the tool and just use it. Now they got to figure out, how does an MCP server work? Or how do I do these prompting things? Or how do I build agents? And so now we're going back to complexity. And we're going back to where consultants are needed again. I mean, this cycle has been over and over again, ladies and gentlemen. This is nothing new. It happens all the time. And if you've been in the game long enough, you've seen it over and over again. And I'm sure same thing with like marketing. Marketing has seen cycles. Manufacturing has seen cycles. Distribution has seen cycles. At the end of the day, because humans were constantly always advancing the tech and advancing what we're doing, because that progress is what we're being promoted on. That's what people are paying us for. And then what ends up happening is we've basically over-engineered something that we made that was simple, because now we've added complexity, because someone had to make themselves the god, or the for lack of a better term, but basically someone wanted to differentiate themselves, so they created a differentiator. That differentiator added complexity. And every time we have a new differentiator, it adds more complexity. And then we get to the point where it's so complex, someone's going to come in and swoop in and say, "Oh, I have the simple solution, and this is going to solve everyone's problem." And then we're back to the cycle, and we do it over and over and over and over again. All right. And so the reason why I mentioned all that before my whole thing about Perplexity is the fact that what I'm going to show you in Perplexity is a system that was built for research primarily, and now it's been adding some of those complexities that I'm talking about. And so the question is, when you're using, so I love Perplexity. I'm a huge fan of Perplexity. Not a huge fan of the pricing model, but I'm a huge fan of Perplexity. The reason why is because 12 years ago when I started my company, I used to have to go to a public library and I'd have to go through a whole bunch of these really expensive databases that I could not afford. I'd go and I'd use these databases and I would get, and mind you, I'm a software engineer at this time. I'm a programmer. And so normally, when you find all this information about your target customer, your product, your market, like all these things that you're researching to do what's called a feasibility study, when you see all that, when you find all this stuff, you have to print it all out in the library. It costs you how many cents per page. And then you got to sift through all this. You have to synthesize it yourself, and then you have to type out a whole report. And so we used to do this one thing called feasibility studies. And the feasibility study, it's just a business term. It's where you go and you research everything about a business idea that you have. You want to find out if it's feasible, if it's something that could actually have legs in a specific marketplace. And so you're doing all this market research and all this business research, but you have to do it in areas that they can afford the databases and the atlases and all the things that you need for the information to do your research. So that's where those libraries came in. So you were basically tied to the library, right? Now you could go online, you can look at Google and you do research on Google, but the problem is Google research, even at the time, is wishy-washy, right? Because there's people that have, today we talk about AI hallucination. Back then, it's like a human hallucination. You have people that read a white paper or like read a book or something, and then what they do is they play that whole telephone game where it's their interpretation of what they read, and then that's what they publish. So you're reading someone else's interpretation that's not straight data. So if you want straight data, which is logical, it's ones and zeros, it's right or wrong, like that's where you go to these databases that say, like, there's no opinion. It's straight up, this is what it is. This is the science, this is the research, this is what it is. This is the market that's currently here. This is what's happening. This is the data. This is where it's at. This is why people are purchasing these things. These are why. So all of that information, you have to go search in the library. So you can imagine time, lots of time, and potential money, depending on if you decide, if you want to print out one of the things, one of the reports, and let's say it's a Reference USA, which is one of the big ones, or IBIS World. Those things cost hundreds of dollars to download those reports, so it costs you money. Well, now today, somebody has gone in and aggregated all of those reports and atlases and all the academic papers and white papers and all that stuff. On top of that, has had permission to scrape through all a bunch of sites' data and pull all that information, do deep research, and do all that stuff live, so that all you have to do is type into a chat bot and then you can just immediately get the results. Perplexity is one of the best to do it. They synthesize a lot of information. In fact, the thing is, it has a pro search feature, right? And it pulls from live web, right? It compares all of those sources and then it gives you a full report and a full answer for you on markets, competitors, and it does all that within minutes. And so you don't have to spend nights of doing research. And that's the biggest thing, especially on, like, if you were like me, you had Google tabs all across your screen. So that's one of the biggest things that Perplexity does for you. And that's, for me, that's one of the top ones that it does, right? Like if you're a small business right now, you can use it to validate, anything you're looking out there. So for instance, perfect example. So I'm looking to find out what other companies that do what I do, what are they charging for the same service? I want to see what kind of contracts are out there. The reason why is because I want to make sure I'm competitive. So instead of me, like in the olden days, instead of me calling these companies, pretending I'm a customer, asking all the pertinent questions, making it look like I'm going to get a sale or they're going to get a sale, which I used to hate doing this, but you had no choice. You get to the point where it's almost like you're selling. They'll be like, okay, well, I'll call you back. I got to talk to my wife about it, And then what ends up happening is you just data mine them for the information. And unfortunately, there's a salesperson, that salesperson on the other end, they make their money, they make their life on selling you. So you just wasted their time, knowing you waste your time. It's one thing when they're selling and they get their time wasted, but it's because someone was legitimately doing a price shop or whatever. But we're talking, I'm calling them, or I used to call them, and I used to go through this process and waste their time just to find out how much they're charging and all this kind of stuff, right? Well, now we don't have to do that anymore. Now that's not, you don't even have to do it. You just go into Perplexity and then you just type in all the information. You're looking for competitors. You tell it what industry you're in. You give it as much information as possible. It goes out, does a research, it gives you a report, it gives you the answers. And then the great thing about Perplexity, what it does, it also digs deeper into the question. So once it answers the question, it gives you prompts of the next question it thinks you're going to ask, which I think is one of the coolest features because sometimes those next questions are exactly what I'm going to ask. So which I really like about it. So that's the thing. And then lightweight. Okay, it's a lightweight ops and marketing copilot. So what I mean by this is that you can use it as an assistant. All right, I have the pro version. You can upload it, a bunch of documents, spreadsheets, standard operating procedures, a bunch of things that you want it to draft, analyze, and then come up with a more tailored version of some of that information. So a good thing to do this, like if you have standard operating procedures, and let's say you just spoke it out into a recorder, or you typed free typed a bunch of information, but you want it to synthesize it in the right way. All you gotta do is upload it to it and then just give it a prompt that says, synthesize this into a real report or a real standard operating procedure, and it'll go through that process. Now that's obviously another way of using it. Again, Perplexity for me is a lot more research and stuff like that. And then the biggest thing is, they're starting to expand some tools so that you can be able to use it as an agentic system. If you haven't heard about agents now, I mean, you probably have because it's been all over the news. Everything is moving towards agents where essentially you can assign specific instances of your system, of your Perplexity or your Claude or whatever, to be able to go out and perform tasks for you and build a team of other sub agents that could do some tasks for you so that you can automate the whole process of data research or physical work. Like there's actual ways that you can have your agents do stuff on the web. So there's a lot of things that are coming out from that. But anyways, Perplexity's providing that more accessible power by adding those features in so that you can use it as more of an assistant that's doing more work for you than just synthesizing data or information that you ask from it. Those are the three top things that it does. Just so that you guys know, you're going to see something a little bit different. So Perplexity does have the ability right over here. There's a little button that says voice mode. It has its own built-in voice mode, which is really cool. However, I have with a system called Whisper Flow. If you look on the screen down here, it says hold down control Windows. So I have a tool called Whisper Flow. That's WISPR Flow. And it's basically a tool that allows me to speak into the microphone, and it'll, wherever my cursor's at, it's going to go ahead and paste what I speak into that thing. You could use Perplexity Whisper. The only reason why or voice mode. The only reason why I'm not going to use voice mode while I'm here on the live, because the voice mode actually responds with audio. So it'll talk back. And the problem is I don't want it to talk back because then it's going to interrupt the podcast and the recording. So first things first, before we get started, I just want to show you what the interface looks like. So on the left-hand side, you have your sidebar. So over here on the screen, you'll see it has a sidebar. It has a search feature. So search is your ability to do a search. It basically opens up the console, allows you to do the search. Then you have new thread. So if you wanted, a lot of times with large language models, you don't want your thread to be too long because of what's called a context window. You only have a limited context window when you're working in memory. And so what ends up happening is if you have such a long context window, it'll forget what you started working on at the beginning. And in some instances, when you're using these tools, you want it to remember the whole conversation. So that's why if you ever use Claude or any of the other tools in my previous episodes, there's a little meter that shows you how much context are you in this chat bot. Once you hit a certain point, it basically creates another chat, and then it pastes like a summary of what you previously talked about so that it keeps all the memory intact. Now, some of these systems have now memory coalescing where it remembers everything from the previous chats. So you do have that capability in all of these systems. But anyway, so new thread is a new thread. I'm sorry, I just went a whole sidebar on new thread and I talked about something that's completely different. History, obviously, this is where you'll see the list of every single chat you've done. As you can see here, before I got on this podcast, I just wanted it to synthesize for me what the top three Perplexity features or three things that Perplexity does really well, because I always talk about the one thing, which is the research and stuff like that. So I wanted to make sure I give you the right information of what are some other features that you could use it for. I will talk about computer a little bit later. I used it. I'll tell you how I feel when I get there. But by the look on my face and my paws, you probably already know. So you could search threads, you could search media, you could search apps that are being used, you can search documents. And so, by the way, apps are anything that it built. So it has the capability, just like Claude, to build certain interfaces and things that if you ask it to. And so it saves all that stuff here. And you'll see it says Grata triage or email triage. That's where I'll talk when I talk about the worker, the computer. I will mention what that is because I have that working in Claude and I've had it working in Claude. And so if you follow me on TikTok, you probably already know what I'm going to be talking about because I did have a little issue with Perplexity. But again, didn't deter me from using it again because obviously Perplexity has more things available. Discover. So this is where you can discover all the news articles, all that stuff. What I do like about Perplexity, and this is something that I'm surprised that the bot didn't mention this in the top 3 things because normally I don't like watching the news. It's a pain in the butt to just keep up what's going on. But what's so awesome is that because I have a license to Perplexity, I get notification on my phone of special news announcements that come out. So a lot of these things like oil prices tumble. And the thing is, don't quote me on this. I'm not sure if it does this, but I feel like it has to know and learn what you want to watch or what you want to read because the news that I get from here is totally relevant to anything I would like to see. Because I've noticed I don't get trash. Like I have, like Apple has their notification system. If you have an iPhone and you're on the Apple News thing, you get notifications for everything, and some of the stuff is just so like I don't want to get involved in all the political crap and all the stuff that's going on. So I just want news on things that are relevant to what I want, and this thing actually does it. Like for instance, the Iran war. Yeah, I'm not a political guy, but I want to know what's going on in the war, right? But I'm saying a lot of the stuff here, it is so tailored exactly to the things that I watch and listen like the All In podcast. I listened to that podcast. So one of the members of that podcast, there's a whole article about it. Um, yeah. Oh, this is interesting. Okay, that's so funny. Sorry, guys. If you're listening and you're not watching, I just read the caption for this one, and it's talking about ditching cursor for Anthropic's Claude code, and it's yeah. I mean, I'm not going to go into that because it's a more advanced topic, but our company we use cursor religiously, and we also started using Claude code religiously, and we've compared the two, and cursor is just killing it. For what we're doing, cursor is just absolutely. I feel like the people that are making the decision not to use cursor or probably because they're only using it in the most fundamental way. We got it working as a multi-agent system, and it's murdering our ability to produce more at lesser tokens. That's neither here nor there in this podcast. Spaces. All right. So Spaces is very similar to like in Claude you have projects and in ChatGPT you have custom GPTs. So you can see here I have Spaces on the screen. If you're watching, you should be able to see that. I have Spaces on here. Let me see if I can give you guys a closer view. I don't know if this will do it. Let's see. Will it allow me to? Yes. Okay, cool. So yeah, so this is a zoom in. So this is space. So top 10 frequently asked questions. So the thing about spaces is you can share spaces. And so in this specific scenario, the top 10 frequently asked questions, this is part of a presentation that I do when I go talk about AI in multiple forums and presentations and conferences. And what I do is I have this one step in trying to find the top 10 questions in the mind of your customers. What are they talking about on Reddit, on Facebook, on all these different channels? Well, the best place to get that information is either going to be 2 places, either Gemini or Perplexity. So I use Perplexity for this deep research because I need the here and now research. So what I did is I created a Spaces, which is a custom, almost like a custom GPT. I created a Spaces where I have preloaded parameters, rules, requests, basically what the prompt would be. And then I just tell it, this is the market that I'm in. Like when I'm chatting with it, I tell it this is the market that I'm in. And so it automatically does the research and it finds what are the top 10 questions that are in the minds of the customers in that area, in that market. And the questions we're talking are like, what do they fear? What do they desire? Like the things that you need to know from a psychological perspective from marketing. That's where I get that information. And so I have this shared to a so right now there's people that are signed up to an online course that I provide, and so they use this bot as they're in the course. So the bot gives them access to this course directly, or the course gives them access to this bot directly, and they can go in and they can use it and they can get the result that they need. And so you can see I don't have a lot of spaces on here. And so these are just examples. So that's not anything special, but I just wanted to show you that real quick and zoom in so that you could see it. I'm trying to master this whole zoom in on Windows. I'm a Mac guy, so I use my Mac for usually all of my other stuff. So sometimes in Windows, I'm just trying to find the shortcuts to zoom in when I can. Finance. So this is basically just tracking the financial sector. I think this is cool. I mean, I love finance, being a business guy and also being an entrepreneur. Shockingly enough, as an engineer, I do have a passion for business and entrepreneurship. And I love have CNBC on my TV here at the office all day as I'm working with my clients and making phone calls and emails. And so the same thing with Perplexity, I come on Perplexity and I can see everything that's happening on the market. And again, don't quote me on this, but again, I have a feeling that their system somehow is remembering or recognizing what I'm interested in, because I feel like all the content it's giving me is perfect. It's exactly the stuff that I go look up every day. So, and then more. So we have travel, shopping, academic. Okay, these are all more research. Again, research, research, research. This is a great research tool. I cannot complain about it. Bookmarks. So yeah, this is funny. So bookmarks, if you find just like a website, if you find something that's interesting to you, right? Let's say you do research on something that's interesting to you and you just want to bookmark it, you bookmark it. So this is a bookmark of a company called Cerebras in California. And the reason why I bookmark these people is because I was given inside information from somebody that is like in Silicon Valley. And they had told me that there's a chip company that's making these chips that are able to run more tokens per second, which is the metric that you're looking for when it comes to using large language models. It has a very, very high output or throughput for tokens per second, and it's doing that with the least amount of heat. So it has an internal cooling system already built in the chip itself. So you don't need to have these big data centers with a lot of water. The chips are cooling themselves at the same time. And so they built this technology, but they're a private company. They're funded and they haven't gone IPO. They're not going public yet. So at the end of the day, I wanted to make sure I keep track of these people. So I bookmarked Cerebras in mine. Okay, so recents, you have all your recents here, just like normal. And then on the bottom, your account stuff. Now this has a lot more options for account. So you have like your actual account. You'll see that. So I'm on the Perplexity $20 a month plan because I don't need anything more than that. But you have all these options here. You have your preferences. And so just like everything else, adjust the preferences for what you need. It's like, for instance, I never use Perplexity for images, but even though I don't, I still have it set to Nano Banana, but I think I have data retention off. Yeah, so I have video generation. But that's the thing is, Perplexity, that's the one thing about Perplexity, I guess, is maybe the downfall to me is the fact that like it's very strict on the license basis, right? So Anthropic and OpenAI, they're kind of flexible with the licensing. You could still use it in a much more advanced way using the chat window rather than like having to go to the computer one. Or yeah, I'm just saying it's like you got so many different options that you could stretch the other LLMs or the other models or not models but the other platforms. But Perplexity is very tied down. So in here, if you want to do images, you got to tell it what model. But right here, video generation, it basically says I have to upgrade. Where like Gemini, I get like 3 videos free, like a day or something like that. And then I have Canva, and Canva allows you to do videos, AI videos now in there too. So, I don't know. It just depends on what you're looking for. So we have artificial intelligence. So AI data retention, it says data retention allows Perplexity to use your searches to improve AI models. I have that turned off. I do that on every one of mine because I'm not going to pass in very secure data, but just in case, just to protect myself, I always have that there. I'm not going to go through all this because you could do that when you're looking at your account. Again, account is free. I used Perplexity for probably like 6 to 8 months without paying a single dime, and I was able to do some deep research stuff. I was able to do a lot. I didn't pay for it until I really wanted to incorporate it into my workflows on a daily basis. And I was worried that if I didn't have the $20 a month, I would use up all of my tokens or my requests or whatever pretty quickly. So I just paid for the $20 just so I could do it. I haven't used any of these shortcuts, but you could read up on that. Notifications again. Perplexity, a lot of this stuff didn't exist not too long ago. Perplexity has been expanding its platform to where it's starting to try to compete versus Claude Code and Claude, where it's starting to add the ability to run tasks and do things for you. So, for instance, a perfect example of this is I can run a scheduled task here, and the scheduled task that it has right now is stuff like very similar to Claude Computer, where it's basically going to use your computer to do things like check your emails, send emails. Like it says here, some examples, it's like news digest, market forecasts, simple things like that. It's nothing major. The problem is when you're using some of these features is like, it's so cool. It's cool. It's a cool factor for today, but I work with small businesses and entrepreneurs that are trying to move the needle and make a profit, make some money and trying to build a business. And because of that, like some of these tools really don't matter to me or my clients. And so if you're watching this, you're probably someone that's in the realm of being someone who's me or my clients. Usage. So you can see right here, the amount of usage I have. So total available credits. To get more credits, you got to upgrade to max. Yeah. So it gives me a certain amount of credits. So I'm at 2,337. That's how many credits that I have, but I think that's per month. Yeah. So that's my credits per month. So I get up to 4,000 credits per month according to this account on the $20 a month plan. You could see where I used up some credits there, like Gmail, the email triage. I used up 1,177 credits. For the email triage was 1,329. I used those credits, by the way. It locked me down pretty quickly. That was the one task that I did. It was basically create an email triage system, and it basically told me that I used up all of my tokens and that I had to get more tokens or upgrade to max, which I said no, because again, in Claude, I already have this triage thing working, so I'm not worried about that. The thing is, I do have a Perplexity API access, but I'll talk about that in a second. So for that specific task, I did have to connect my Gmail, so I have a Gmail connected. But this is the connectors where you can connect all these different services. So when you're using it almost like an agent, or you're using it as an agent, you can basically request it to do certain things in all of these types of platforms. So that's what this is for. Pro perks, never use this, don't know what this is. Pro membership automatically qualifies you. Oh, cool. They have partner offers. Ooh, I have a Fireflies account. I wonder if I can get a discount on Fireflies because I have Perplexity. That's interesting. I didn't even know this existed, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. This is pretty cool. Iator, I know that. So that's a company. We built a vacation rental property platform years ago. And if you wanted to buy tickets to, like, surfing or skating, or, or if it's something up in the mountains and you want to do skiing, Viator is the company that holds all of those, like, travel experiences, like it says here. And so anyways, next, shopping. I haven't touched that. Travel, I haven't touched that. Upgrade to enterprise. Absolutely not. Don't need that. Okay, so this is where the API comes in. All right. So API, application programmable interface. I'm sure I've talked about this in a previous episode. APIs are the way that you can interconnect multiple systems together. What it is, API really was a translator. That's originally how it was built. So back in the days, you had all these disparate systems that were doing different things and had different programming languages. The API was the way for those systems to talk with each other, and the API kind of acts like an interpreter. So it basically, the system that is written in one language can spit out information to the API, and the API takes that information and converts it to what it understands, and then basically, after it takes that information, it processes it, and then it returns it back to the original requester in the format that it understands. So it's kind of like a translator of data. And the reason why you use APIs is so that you can be more expansive and scalable. So you can integrate it with other APIs and other systems. Very similar if you guys are getting into the whole MCPs that are coming out now, or not now, but been out for a little bit. But MCPs is just a different connector, but it's the same concept. It's where there's other tools and other things out there that you can go get information from or go use, and you need to connect to it. The difference is APIs are more for programmatical systems that are using programming languages, and then MCPs are specific to large language model connections, a new way of connecting to tools inside of a large language model. That's the biggest difference between the two. And then, you have API member billing, all that kind of stuff. API keys. So this is where you would create your keys. So if you want to use Perplexity programmatically, or you want to use a Zapier, or you want to use Make, or if you're building your own agentic system with OpenClaw and you want to use Perplexity to do like deep research programmatically, this is where you would get your key to be able to put that into your system. And then once the code hits that part where it's going to access Perplexity, it'll know to use that API key to go, because you need that API key for authentication to the API so that it can give you the information you're looking for. And that's what that is. API Playground. Yes, this is where you can adjust the query. You can adjust a whole bunch of different things and get a result set and basically figure out like what you're going to spend, like what you're going to be doing, just so you can make a better decision. But you don't have to know that. That's all like more development, technology, deeper tech type stuff. But I just want to show that to you because it's available and it's there. You do have an incognito mode over here on the top right. Let me zoom in so you can see that. So right here on the top right, so that little button right there, that is the button for the incognito. And so basically what it does is after 24 hours, it just basically removes everything that you've chatted in there. The memory and everything is gone. So this is like if you just want to do something, but you don't want to save any of the memory. All right, so now let's go to the middle. Perplexity, you'll see the name there, and then we have the chat here. You can see that if you type /, there's all these different types of search modes. If I hit /, we have deep research, model counseling, create files and apps, all that kind of stuff. This is just to tell it what your intentions are. It's very similar to the plus sign down here. So I can say upload files and images, add files from the cloud, connectors here, deep research, model counseling. I still have those options down here. See that? So you either hit the plus, or if you want to do quick key and just hit the /, and then you basically just select one. So say I select deep research. So now it knows that I want to do a deep research. So that's what that is. Then you have the choice of models. So again, so this is one, I think this is, you've seen the commercials on Perplexity. If you've seen the commercials, this is the one thing they tout all over the place. And this is correct. This is Perplexity has the ability to use the models, any one of these models at any time. Now, there's a tool called Open Router, which we use when we're doing programmatic stuff. Programmatic stuff, we use a tool called Open Router that allows us programmatically to select which model we want to use for whatever request that we're making. Perplexity Pro allows you to do that up here on the chat. It allows you to select whether you want to use GPT-5, which is the latest model, Gemini 3.1, right? It was the latest model, Claude Sonnet 4.6. Now it locked down the max because it looks like you need, what is that? Access to top eight. Okay. Yeah, because you have to be on a max plan for that. Kimi K 2.5, that is the Chinese one that's supposed to be really, really good. Enter at your own risk. I'm not a huge fan of the Chinese models. I'm just not that I'm not a fan of the models. The models do a phenomenal job, but just because of the nature of the business that we're in, we're not allowed to use Chinese anything. So it all depends. If I'm doing something personally, I'll use it. But if it's like corporate work or anything like that, we don't use it because it doesn't fall in line to what's allowed for some of our clients and some of their security protocols. So we can use it or not, depends on the client. All right, so then you have computer here, which I'll explain a little bit, and then you have right here was dictation, which is you just click on that and just speak, and they'll capture everything. And then you have voice mode, which I can use either of these, but I like my tool because my tool I can just hold a button. It's like talking on a walkie-talkie. I hold the button down, talk, and then let go. Okay, so there it is. So there's Perplexity. That's the interface. I'll go into computer because that's probably something good to go into. All right. So what computer does everything that Claude Computer does, or any of the agentic systems, even your OpenClaw. If you're using OpenClaw, if you're using any one of the tools that has agents in it, this is basically Perplexity's answer to it. What it does is you sit here and you go to the start task and you give it a task to perform. So in this case, I did an email triage task that I had already done in the past. Okay. And so what it did is this triage task, the task that I gave it was, I want you to go through my emails. I want you to go to the last 24 hours of my emails. And I want you to find all of the emails that are very important that I either need to read and answer or I need to respond. Then create another section that is emails that are not as important, but they're still beneficial to me. And then the last section is emails that are all just spam emails that happen just not to fall in the spam box, but they showed up in my inbox. So what happens is when you say that, it basically asks you a few questions and they'll start pushing off agents, right? It's building instances of little worker bees that are going out and doing all this work, aggregating the information, capturing it, synthesizing it, putting it into a response. And then when it's done, depending on your request, it'll either give you the response right there on the screen, or if you're like me, I like things to be in a dashboard. So when I asked it to make sure everything gets done in a dashboard, when it finished gathering all the information, it automatically spun up an agent to build the dashboard. And that's what you're seeing here, which is the dashboard for daily Gmail triage. Again, it was working perfectly fine. However, I ran out of the tokens. And so this is where my pet peeve is at. And this is why I said earlier I was going to explain this. The problem is if I use Claude Code, or if I use Claude, just the chat version, and I made these saving requests, which I have done, it built the whole thing out and never came close to using as many tokens as I have in my plan. And I have the same $20 plan. I have a $20 plan there. I have a $20 plan here. And so it's one of those things. It's like, okay, well, if I can build this thing in Claude Code and it's built, I don't need you. I just was testing you. Then I'm just going to stick with my Claude Code and I'm not going to use this. But then what it made me think of is I asked for one task and I used up all my tokens, and now you want me to pay the $200 max plan. So for a small business, they're not going to do that, because unless this thing has the ability to make me more than $200 a month, there's no point in for me spending $200 for a tool that just checks my emails. You get what I'm saying? Like, this is a personal thing for me. I'm saving 30 minutes to 45 minutes of my morning, let's say 4 hours. I'm saving 45 minutes of a 4-hour morning. Is that worth $200? I don't know. I don't see the value yet. And that's me personally. But if you're someone that, like, you have an assistant that you pay $80,000 a year just to do that, maybe this does make sense to you. Right. So it really depends on where you're at in your business, in your life, and what you're doing. And one thing you'll find out about me, and I talk about this many times, is that I am not a judger. Granted, if you go to my TikTok, it might sound like I'm different. I am a judger. But what I mean by that is like, I understand that everyone has their own place where they're at in life, where they're at in their business and everything. And I try to keep that in mind when people are making decisions on whether they want to do this or not. Again, if you go to my TikTok, it may seem like I'm judging everybody, but the reality is I'm only judging people that hype things up and then lie on TikTok. So I just want to make that extremely clear. If you go to my TikTok, I don't want you to think that, no, I'm just yelling at everybody. No, I'm just only yelling at people that like to hype stuff and lie. They're telling a lie because they're trying to sell an online course or something, and they're just lying through their teeth because they're trying to get you to buy their course. But then when you buy their course, you'll spend all this money and then you'll fail because all the things they're telling you it's supposed to do, it's not going to do. Okay, I'm off my high horse. Move on. All right. And so you see, it says here inbound lead capture architecture, feature availability. Like, so these are all, by the way, these are all agents. It spins up these tasks and then each task gets its agent and it goes and it does its thing. And so that's what happened there. And then you can schedule tasks. It has a little schedule here. So you can schedule a task. So once you complete and everything works, then you can put it on a schedule, on a timer, similar to like people that are using the heartbeat mode in OpenClaw. Same thing. It's basically a timer and you can trigger it at any time. So that's computer. Now let me explain and let me show you something. Let me just show you how I use the tool. I'm using WhisperFlow. What I'm doing is I'm going to hold down my keys. I'm going to say something, and then we'll go from there. All right. So let's come up with a scenario. What I want to find out is I want to find out with real estate people, they spend a lot of time trying to get clients, and everyone's a realtor. It just feels like everyone's a realtor. So what we're going to do is this is going to be my prompt, and I'll speak it into it, and then we'll go through it. Okay. You are my assistant, and I'm a realtor operating in the Orlando, Florida area. And your job is to make sure that we are able to go and attack a market that has good valuation, of good value market, where know I can make some money. I can find a blue ocean opportunity. So the first thing I want you to do is, I'm a realtor. I sell single family homes. I don't necessarily have a range. I don't have a specific target customer. But what I want you to do is I want you to figure out what a good niche, sub niche, and a micro niche is that I can enter into, one that's not completely saturated in Orlando, Florida. And then what I want you to do is I want you to synthesize information on how I can attack that market, what kind of customer I can go after. Once you figure that out, I want you to determine what is the target avatar for my specific business. And again, we're focused on real estate, residential real estate. And the problem is it's so saturated. So I want you, as my researcher, to find out what area is not as saturated or has the least amount of saturation. Synthesize this information from a deep research and then compile it into a nice graph and a chart so that I can see exactly visually what kind of market I can go into and I could go attack and potentially make some money. Okay. So now I just hit enter and then I just let it go to work. So now it's going to go deep research. It's citing all the sources, by the way. So it's going through all the sources, checking. Now, by the way, did you notice I use WhisperFlow? So that's why I like WhisperFlow. I can chat for 5-10 minutes in WhisperFlow and just completely think through my process. What WhisperFlow does is it takes everything I say and then it compiles it into a standard way of speaking. Like it doesn't take all my ums, ahs, and everything. No, it cuts all that stuff out and makes it a clean, just like if I spoke without any hesitation, makes it clean so that when it gives it to the tool that I'm using, it has a very clear definition of what I said instead of all of this back and forth and all this stuff. Okay. All right, you could position yourself around relocation and lifestyle change niches rather than generic home in Orlando, with a focus on specific life situations and geographies that other agents supposed to ignore or only mention in passing. So niche, sub-niche, micro-niche. So based on the current Orlando trends, population inflow, school-driven suburbs, medical tech growth, and aging demographics, here's a strategic stack. All right, so here it is. So the niche, relocation and lifestyle change buyers for single family homes. Why is it saturated? Because most agents vaguely serve everyone in Orlando, few specialize in entire. So again, it did all this research. It went and it found articles, it went and found reports, both industry association, did all that really quickly, right? And came up with this response. Sub niche, out of state and in state move up families targeting school-centric growth corridors. Horizon, Winter Garden, Lake Nona adjacent, which actually that's a really good one. If you're ever in Orlando, Lake Nona is blowing up. It was basically a bunch of trees and forest and all that stuff about 15, 20 years ago. I've lived in Orlando area for basically my whole life. I've watched it go from completely out there woods and a lake in the middle of the woods. And now it's Lake Nona and it has a bunch of nice houses and things. And so it's constantly growing and everything. So these corridors are well known, but consumer guidance is noisy. There's room for specialists, and that's true. In Lake Nona, if you don't know the right person, the right realtor, and you move out there, you might move into the wrong spot because the traffic out there is horrendous. There's a lot of things out there that are going on that are great for the town it's building itself, but you could find yourself caught in some major traffic on a daily commute and all that kind of stuff. So, and then the micro niche. So the micro niche, I love going down to the micro niche. The micro niche is basically you got to look at it as a target, right? You have like a big target. So the outside circle, right, is your niche. The closer circle, right, the more towards the inside is your sub niche, and now the bullseye is your micro niche. And the reason why you do that is because if you market to a specific target market in that much definition, you have a chance of charging higher prices because you're a specialist in that specific area. And you get more customers because you are a specialist. And that's what's really important. So it says right here, multi-generational friendly or flex-based single-family homes, 4+ bedrooms, office, flex room, in-law suites for relocating professionals, healthcare, tech, remote workers. And that is totally like there's 2 incubators out there for tech. There's a bunch of health tech out there. There's a new satellite company that's out there. So it's a very tech centric environment. And then it explains why. And like I said, it synthesizes all this stuff within a matter of seconds. So multi-generational household. So these are just specific niches, and you can look into that if you're a realtor. Target customer avatar. Again, so this is where we get to the important part. So target customer avatar. Here's a concrete avatar built around the micro niche. So all your messaging, content, and prospecting lines up. So the age, you're looking for someone between the ages of 35 to 52, married with a long-term partner, 2 to 3 kids planning, sometimes with a parent, income household, 140 to $260,000. That's absolutely correct. You do have to make a crap ton of money to live out there. Healthcare, remote tech, location now. So this is funny. It says location now, out of state, New York, New Jersey, California, Illinois. I'm not lying to you. If you go out there, that's what you find. You find people that had just migrated from New York or New Jersey or California or some other major city, and they've come to Lake Nona. It's amazing. It's amazing. I'm telling you. That's why I love using this tool, because it's a research. I used to have to sit in a library, ladies and gentlemen, for hours, and I had to research all these databases, and then I had to do the math myself to figure out like percentage of people that move or percentage of people that do this. And then you have to kind of like surmise what your data points are. And so it was very clunky, not as accurate as you want it to be. And here now you have the ability to get extremely accurate. Key drivers, space for multi-generational living, all this kind of stuff. Now, this is the funny part. So it tells you what your positioning is, how to attack the market, anchor on specific corridors, which that everyone does that. They pick a specific area. So Lake Nona adjacent, build a simple scorecard for each micro area. So commute time, school cluster, all of that stuff. And so you could do a pre-move consult as your offer. So that basically anyone who's moving to Florida, you could do a pre-move consult. For seller, for 55+ downsizers, leaving large properties in old suburbs, position their home specifically to multi-generational buyers. So these are certain things that you would do. Now check this out. So this is the part that I like too, is the follow-up questions. It has follow-up questions. I want to focus on first healthcare workers. I want to target remote tech workers, right? I want to combine both segments. So check this out. So then I'm going to say, considering the information you just gave me, could you give me what are the top 10 questions in the mind of some of these people that are moving here and migrating from New York, New Jersey, Illinois, California? What are they thinking? What are their pain points, their fears? What are the things that are going to drive them to actually make a decision to purchase a home from me? And then hit it. So as you can tell, if you haven't already been able to tell, the words that I'm using inside the LLM are very specific and expert related. I'm an expert. I've been doing marketing and sales for many, many years. I've been involved in tech development and building AI and building solutions for many, many years. So every time I talk to the chatbots, I have years of expertise, 20+ years, 25+ years of expertise, depending on the industry. I only have about 20 years of marketing, but 25+ years of technology, of taking of all that knowledge, and I can tell it the knowledge specific phrasing. And so it understands what I'm asking. Right. So that's why I'm always a proponent of, you still need to have that level of skill. Like using these tools to just use these tools and you've never developed a skill is probably the worst thing you can do. You need to develop the skills in these areas so that when you're communicating, you communicate the best and get the best results. All right. So here are 10 high leverage questions and fears. So money, total cost of risk. Is my overall cost of living really going to be lower here? Or am I just trading income tax for hidden costs like insurance and HOAs, right? They're attracted by the state no income tax, right? So it's giving you questions, specific questions. Now, Marketing coaches, which I have marketing coaches and ad coaches, and they'll tell you the reason why you want these questions is because you want to speak into the verbiage and the mind of your customer where they are today. And so if you know that these are the questions that they're asking, then your job, if you're out there selling whatever product or service that you're offering, is to answer those questions in your marketing copy, in your social media posts, and all that stuff. That's what that's for. Can I actually afford the lifestyle, all that kind of stuff. So as you can see, it went through all of this. Now, extra bonus here. Again, on the $20 plan, you can use computer, but obviously you might use up all the tokens if you ask for a real elaborate computer request. However, if I have all this information, okay, if I go in here, I'm going to copy this, okay, I'm going to go inside of computer, and then I'm going to actually, what I'll do first, I'm going to create a file, and I'm going to paste everything I just copied. And I'm going to file, and I'm going to save as, and I'm going to say that this is the real estate questions. Real estate questions. Okay. I'm going to save that, close it out. So now in here, when I do my start task, I'm going to hit here. I'm going to say upload file or image. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to upload those real estate questions. Hope you're following. If you're not following, I'm going through the process. If you're listening, you can watch the video on YouTube and you'll see it. All right. So now check this out. Now I'm going to hold down my key. All right. So every day at 8 a.m., what I want you to do is I want you to give me 4 LinkedIn posts, 4 Facebook posts, 4 TikTok carousels, and then 4 TikTok video scripts pertaining to the contents of the real estate questions. I'm going to hit enter. All right. So now what it's going to do is computer is going to say, okay, I'm going to start building out some agents in order to be able to do some of this stuff for you. And you're seeing it. It's all happening right there. So it's looking up so check this out. So it's going to my Digital Strike brand because this is my account and it knows that I have Digital Strike. So it's using its memory and it's going to so this is going to be an interesting result because it's going to use my Digital Strike brand, which is totally sales and marketing, automation and systems. And it's going to try to build out content in my, the Digital Strike language for these specific posts. This is going to be freaking crazy. It's going to be really crazy. All right, so it's asking me questions. A few quick details. So again, this is the agentic side. So now it's asking questions. Am I blocking you guys? No, I'm not. Okay, cool. It says a few quick details. Make sure the detailed content is right. What name brand should be used in the post? Your personal brand Grata or your specific real estate brand, right? So I'm going to call this XYZ Realty. But obviously you would use whatever if you're a realtor. Again, only if you're a realtor. I know some of you guys on here watching are not realtors. I just use this because I feel like everyone is a realtor at some point. So I figured I might as well just use a realtor as an example. Should the content cycle through all 10 questions each day, 4 posts? No, I want to randomize, rotate across topics. Okay. What tone should the post have? Authority, empathy, casual, relatable, always casual, relatable. That's what social media is all about. Should each post include a CTA? If so, what kind? Ooh, I like that. So comment and engagement, I'm going to say both contact and content engagement. So now we just let it cook. So now it's building the task prompt so that I could task the agent on exactly what to do. I probably am going to run out of all my tokens, by the way, by the time it's done. If it runs through all my tokens, I'm going to be really frustrated because that means the only way to get anything done on here is a $200 plan. So even though I've been glazing them the whole time at watch, I probably just screwed over by doing this demo. All right, all set. Here's what locked in. Okay, daily content machine, XYZ Realty, every day, 8 a.m. Eastern. You'll receive a file with 16 pieces of content ready to go for LinkedIn posts, for Facebook posts, all content rotated. Okay, let's see what happens. Okay, first batch will arrive tomorrow at 10:15. Okay, so it says first batch is going to be tomorrow at 8 a.m. All right, now I have that set up here. It says tomorrow will be 8 a.m. Okay. Now my question is I want to kick it off. Okay. Kick off the first example. So now I'm just going to go ahead and kick off the first example because I want to see if it's going to generate the correct stuff. Okay. And now mind you, this is AI. This is AI and agents. This is not automation. We haven't touched automation. What automating would be the next step is after it creates all of this, how do we take the information from here and then how do we post it on our actual social media platforms, which is possible, absolutely possible. But this is where it requires a little bit more complexity. Just like I said earlier, right? Like as these systems get more and more advanced in the sense of how AI works and agents work, and you add the automation piece, then there's some level of complexity. There's setup time, there's logging in, there's all these different things. So it requires a little bit more work, a little more synthesizing. But at the same time, it's going to require more tokens. I'll just be honest with you. So you have to be ready to spend money on tokens. And that's just the nature of the game. AI is not free. It costs a lot of money to operate. And then using agents eats up a lot of that, the AI tokenization. Is something you still have to deal with. So it's generating my social content. You see how it's creating an MD file? That is the new thing. MD files have been around for a while. I used to write all of my notes when I would type during a seminar or something. I used to write all of my notes in MD files. MD files or markdown files are basically ways of doing the same thing you would like writing HTML, but you use a different type of syntax. So for instance, instead of H1 for header, you do 1 pound. Every pound is the next header size. So 2 pounds is header 2, 3 pounds is header 3, 4 pounds is header 4, and so on and so forth. And when you want bullet points, you do dash space, creates a bullet point. And when you want to highlight something, you do star star and then whatever the phrase is, and then star star at the end, and then it basically bolds that piece. And there's all these special characters like that you would use to do stuff. Like you can create data tables very simply with just some special characters here and there. So there's a lot of stuff that you could do with Markdown. And the reason why AI uses Markdown, or the reason why a lot of the programming behind artificial intelligence is referring to markdown files, is because programmers, we've been using markdown files for a while. And the thing is, it's simple. The syntax is simple, the structure is simple. So what it allows us to do is it allows us to leverage the syntax of markdown to put as much information as possible down into a document that doesn't have a whole bunch of special characters that are unnecessary, so that the AI can read it and synthesize it a lot better. And you'll notice I use the word synthesize a lot because that's exactly what's going on. So pardon me if I use that word like a million times, but that's the only right word to use because that's exactly what it's doing. It's combining a bunch of information together and squeezing it into one output. All right, here you go. So LinkedIn posts. All right, so it says here, here's your first batch, 16 pieces of content. So 4 posts, cost of living reality, the Naperville family story, real numbers on insurance, HOA, CDD still comes out ahead. Insurance and hurricanes. So it's giving just specific title topics. Facebook affordability, house poor and bigger house with pool framing, schools. Okay. So CTA's alternative below. Okay. Tomorrow's back. Okay. All right. So I can already tell you that this is a failure of big proportions. These are not posts. This is not something I would post anywhere. And so this is where now it becomes a conversation with the chat, right? So I'm going to tell it. These are very, very small, non-real information posts that you've provided for me. I wanted the full post. I wanted the post that I can literally copy and paste from here to my actual account. So you've been giving me basically ideas of a post or ideas of the content. I need the actual content, or else this is useless. So why would I say that at the end? This is useless. AI works better when you talk down to it. Don't ask me why. It just is that way. If you tell it that you suck, it'll make it better because now it's offended. And I say that loosely. I mean, there's no real emotions. It's not offended. But I'm saying, though, technically, you said something that offended it. So it's going to try to improve. So see, it says, what I gave you, read like outlines and summaries, not actual rate of post. Let me redo this property. Full length posts, you can copy and paste directly, and placeholders, no summaries. So basically what it's doing now, it's updating the agent and the task, or it's updating the task so that when it gives it to the agent, it actually is updated. So over here on the left-hand side, which I will zoom in real quick. So you see it has a new task files, connectors, skills, and so on and so forth. The reason I wanted to show you that is because skills is important. So this is where you can give it a whole bunch of skills. You'll see legal contact review, sales call prep. So the thing with AI, especially when you're using agents, is you want to give it a skill and you want it to focus on a specific skill. And by the way, all these skills are exactly what I said earlier about the MD files. All they are is they're an MD file with specific instructions and rules that give it that skill. So for instance, I have a skill on one of my other bots. I have a skill that is Angular, which is a specific programming language for front end. It's a framework for front end development and user interface development. So I gave it a skill of Angular and I attach it to an Angular MCP, which is again the communication tool, so that it can learn what Angular is and how it works, the format, the structure, and everything, so that every time I give it a task that requires Angular, it's always giving me a industry standard syntax and coding for that specific language. Now, in this specific scenario, like if I click on sales prep, you'll see here it says call prep. So these are all markdown, right? And so it's specific instructions. What is it going to do, right? When you run the skill, ask for what? It's a requirement. It needs company contact name, meeting type, all that kind of stuff. It needs a CRM connector, an email, a chat, transcripts, calendar. And so it says right here, call prep. So the whole purpose of this is set up for meetings. That's the whole purpose of this. So this is the markdown file that gives it specific instructions. Okay. Ask these fill gaps and your interesting questions about their current situation, question about their points. So this is very similar to a sales development representative, which it's answering questions for a person that is calling in. Okay. Execution flow says calendar, find upcoming meetings matching the company name, full title, name, attendees, description, CRM, query the account details, all contacts, so on and so forth. Then email, query emails with that company domain, right? If no connector, then ask the user, what company are you meeting with? What type of meeting is this? Research supplements, always run web searches. And then here's that word, synthesize and generate. That's what it does, synthesize and generate. It says combine all sources, identify context, right? At the end of the day, you want the output formatted for a prep brief. So this is just information for an incoming call. And then, like I said, and it's a skill empty file. So what I said, so once you try it, you put it into the chat, then that's what its purpose is. So I'm assuming this one is, if you're about to get on a sales call, you can do all of the prep work using this bot rather than you doing the prep work manually. Basically researching the company, finding out about them, figuring out what area you can talk to them about when it comes to business, all that kind of stuff. So, all right, I'm going to go back to task, see where we're at with this. So it looks like it's still trying to build out all the stuff. It's still building out the rules. So it created a document. Okay. And in this document, you have a LinkedIn post. Okay. So I think this one is for someone who is trying to prevent someone to move to Florida. This is what I keep talking about when you see these people go on social media and say, I have AI build all this stuff for me and I don't have to do anything and it makes me a lot of money. So in this scenario, so this is where you would follow up in the next chat and you would say, dude, we are the Florida real estate agents. We want people to buy homes in Florida. We were trying to sell to people here in Florida, right? So this is where you'd have to go back in to the chat and you have to tell it that and then say, no, you need to build, this needs to be where we're a realtor in Florida trying to help people buy and sell homes in Florida. And so all of this is everything that I've read so far is stay in Jersey. Don't come here because there's a lot of hidden costs you don't know about. Anyways, so I want to show you that. So again, it's the work that you have to do in AI. There's still work. I'm glad this happened while we were sitting here live. There is still work. You still got to read through this stuff and you still got to use your expertise. You got to tell it, no, that's not what I wanted. I wanted this. And then once you get to the final destination, yes, it looks great. And again, the reason why I'm showing you this computer feature is because as you keep fixing and fixing, it's updating its MD file, which is the rules and the guidelines. So once it's locked down, then you can automate it. I always say this every time. Once you have the process not nailed down, you have a process that works. It's doing the right thing. Now we can start the automation process. But before that, you have to continue cleaning up, iterating through to getting the right answers. Because that's what I would do next. If I was going to do this for real, I would say, first of all, I'm the realtor. We're the realtors selling properties in Florida to people who are migrating from other cities. So therefore, all of your posts are against Florida, moving to Florida, rather than an enticement for people to move to Florida. Again, terminology, choosing the right terminology, all of that. So that would be the next step in this process. And by the way, look at that schedule. If you look at the schedule that I just popped up here, so the daily XYZ task has been set to run in 12 hours and 34 minutes. Am I going to run it? Absolutely not. But I just wanted to show you how that works. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that's everything that I have to say about Perplexity right now. Again, I love the tool for research. It's a research god. I mean, I could research all day on this thing and it comes up with really amazing reports. So I'm telling you that it is really, really good. But yeah, that's basically it. So thank you for all of those that are on Digital Strike Hub that are trying to learn how to do all this stuff and are using our hub to do it. Again, I appreciate you guys being there. I hope that I can help you get to where you want to get to, accomplish the goals that you're trying to accomplish. That's what my whole purpose is. And that's I love this stuff. I do this every single day. So thank you very much for being part of that. And then also for those that are listening to the AI Automation Alchemist podcast, if you're interested in being in the Digital Strike Hub community, all you got to do is just go to school.com/digital strike hub and then hit enter. And then you'll see our community and then just request to be part of the community. And as long as you are a good person and you are really interested in learning this and becoming better and also leveraging this for your business, this type of stuff for your business, absolutely, that's what we're there for. So you can sign up for it. So again, like, subscribe, follow, find me on TikTok. Those are funny videos. And I mean that because I'm always bitching, complaining about stuff. But anyways, thank you very much for being on this. And I will check you guys out in the next one.